I have some wonderful news to share with all of you. Today the Archbishop has announced the return of Masses, which will happen at the end of May, the last Sunday of May. Now, I do want to say that Masses will return in a sort of limited way. There will be a lot of restrictions around Masses that we still need to sort through, and you'll get more information as that comes. With that in mind, though, I think it's really important for us to prepare to enter into the celebration again, through a better understanding of the Mass, through recognizing how we can really pray at Mass. Very often, people think of Mass as coming for the homily and coming for communion, right? And I might be diminishing it for some people, for many people, hopefully, right? But I think there's sometimes a perspective that we come to Mass to listen to the homily and to receive communion. But Mass is so much more than that. Yeah, at Mass, as you know, the priest takes the bread and wine and consecrates them. He says the words of Jesus at the Last Supper, and they become the body and blood, soul and divinity, real presence of Jesus. So Jesus is truly fully present there. And in Holy Communion, yes, we have the opportunity to receive our Lord. And so that is a participation in we could say, the great wedding banquet of heaven, the great feast of heaven. A wonderful spiritual practice you can do during Mass is to imagine the angels and the saints around the altar and around all of us. Because at Mass, heaven comes down to us. And it's in a veiled way, it's in a sort of a hidden way, but a real way. Heaven comes down to us. The wedding feast of heaven comes to us. And we partake of that feast in a powerful way through the reception of Holy Communion. But at the same time, simultaneously at Mass, we are at the foot of the cross in Calvary. The sacrifice of Jesus in Calvary is present for us at Mass. And so even if a person doesn't receive Holy Communion, they are participating in this offering of Jesus at Calvary. Now, when I say this, I mean it's important that we recognize that the Mass is an offering, and the priest offers the Mass. No one can celebrate the Mass except for a priest, right? A priest is ordained, and when he's ordained, he's not. It's not just like the church says, well, this is a good person to take on this role. But when he's ordained, he receives a special grace, and his soul is changed permanently. In baptism, your soul is changed permanently. And it can never be undone. You never can be rebaptized. The priest is the same way. He is changed permanently. He can never remove the mark of a priest from his soul. And so he has this transformation. And by this inner transformation, the priest is able to act in the person of Christ in the sacraments. Which means that when the priest acts in the sacraments, Christ acts in the sacraments, right? So when the priest does the sacramental actions and he says the words, Jesus is doing that in a sense through him. The priest stands in the place of Christ in the sacraments. He stands in the place of Christ in the sacraments. Now, priests are very imperfect, right? Look at me, right? You all know that. And even though I'm very imperfect, the Lord uses me as His instrument. And at the Mass, I stand in the place of Christ as the presider, as the president, as Jesus presiding at the cross, right? And so we are called to join in Jesus' offering. There's a part in the Mass which we very often miss the significance of. The priest turns to the people and he says, "Pray, brothers and sisters, that my sacrifice and yours may be acceptable to God the Almighty Father." Pray that my sacrifice and yours may be acceptable to God the Almighty Father. So there's something going on here, right? We are supposed to be offering sacrifice when we come to Mass. So that the part that we call the liturgy of the Eucharist before Holy Communion, that whole part with the prayers, that's meant to be us offering a sacrifice. You are supposed to offer your life in sacrifice to God. So every time you come to Mass, I encourage you to offer yourself, to say, Lord, I give you my struggles from this past week. I give you my sacrifices, my hard work. I give you my very self. I lay it at your altar with the bread and wine. I lay it at your feet. And through the hands of the priest, that sacrifice that you offer is offered up to God with Jesus' sacrifice. Again, when you bring your offering, your sacrifice of your life to the altar, that sacrifice is offered up to God through the priest's sacrifice, the priest's offering, in union with Jesus' sacrifice. So this is a huge part of the spirituality of the Mass. So even if a person doesn't receive Holy Communion in a particular Mass, they are called to offer themselves with the sacrifice of Jesus. And we do this, the people respond to the priest by saying, "May the Lord accept this sacrifice at your hands for the praise and glory of His name, for our good and the good of all His holy church." We do this to glorify God. Lord, you are so good. We offer our lives to you because you are so good. We praise and we glorify you, but also to the praise and glory, for our good. Right? We need the grace of God, and so we come to offer ourselves so that we can be changed. We can receive the help and the strength of God through grace, and also for the good of the whole church, for all the church throughout the world. And so, as we prepare ourselves for coming back to Mass at the end of May, I think it's important that we enter into the spirituality of the Mass. That we recognize that Mass is a wedding feast where we participate in the glory of heaven in a veiled way. But we also recognize that we are called to offer ourselves in sacrifice with Jesus to the Father. Please know of my continued prayers, and may God bless all of you.